How's it going? This is Hoiman, and today we're taking a look at the Amiibo Sheik figure. So this figure is obviously based on an illustration from Smash Brothers for Wii U, and I think for the most part they did a really good job. They really captured the likeness of the pose from the illustration really well, and overall I think the sculpt on this figure is pretty decent. It does capture the likeness of the character really well. There's lots of detail going on. So taking a closer look at Sheik's face, although it's mostly covered, I feel that they still capture the likeness of her character pretty well. Her eyes are nicely painted on, even the one behind the hair. And then hair itself is nicely sculpted for the most part. There is a bit of a seam line that kind of runs across them, so it does detract it from a bit. And then the hair does move on to the back, which ends in a nice ponytail, nicely sculpted and detailed. And then you have the bandages at the tip, and then the whole ponytail is a softer material, so you don't have to worry too much about it breaking. Moving on to her headscarf, it's really nicely sculpted and detailed. You can see all the strands and different layers. And then moving down to her outfit, the Sheik symbol is really nicely painted on. Looks very nice and clean. And then her whole uniform is very nicely detailed and textured. There's just a lot of sculpting in the layers and all the stitching and all the armor parts, and it's just really well detailed for the most part. And then you have the bandages on her forearm and then on her fingers as well. And then the body itself has a lot of matte finishes, but then there's also metallics and glossy finishes in various areas, so it makes for a nice contrast between the areas. On the back you have a knife. It's nicely sculpted and detailed, and it is a softer material. And then moving down to her legs, really nicely sculpted, very armored and texture heavy as well. And then on the shoes you have all the laces and then all the patterns on the sides as well. And then you have the kind of chainmail texturing on her ankle and then on her toe as well. And it's a nice metallic finish. So again, it's a very nice contrast from the rest of the figure. In terms of the paintwork, it's very clean for the most part, but when it comes to shading, it's kind of all over the place for this figure. So for the head, it's really heavily shaded with a lot of darker washes, so it makes it almost a brown color. But then you move on to a muffler, which has a lot less shading, so it's much more white. And then you move on to the bandages, which is shaded really heavily as well. But then you move on to the front part with the white and it isn't shaded at all, so it really makes it stick out. The forearms are really heavily shaded, but the bandages on the fingers aren't, so again it really stands out. And then for the legs, the white bandages aren't shaded at all, so again it just makes for a really odd combination in the contrast. But the armored parts on the legs are nicely shaded with darker and lighter tones, so they look really nice, but it's just the shading on the white that's really all over the place for this figure. And then finally you have the stand, which is a Smash logo, and it's very reminiscent from the game. And then for the bottom you have legal stuff. So overall, this is a really nice looking figure of Sheik. It captures the likeness of the character really well, captures the pose of the illustration really well, and overall it's a really good representation of the character. But my main gripe with the figure is the shading. It's just kind of all over the place. It looks really nice for the most part, but because some parts aren't shaded at all, like the bandages on her fingers, the bandages on her legs, and also the front part of her uniform, it really just makes it really inconsistent, and it just kind of makes a really odd contrast on the combination. So if the shading throughout the white was all consistent, I feel it would have really improved the figure a whole lot. And my other gripe with the figure is, this is quite a personal one, but it's the pose itself. Like, I'm just not sure what the pose is going for. I know it's a very ninja-esque sort of pose, but I don't know. I just can't tell what it's going for. Like, I don't know what kind of pose she's trying to strike or what she's trying to do in the air. It's just a very minor gripe, but I just thought I'd point it out. But in the end, I feel that this is still a really decent representation of Sheik, and if you're a fan of the character or the games, then I can still recommend this figure. But that's my review. Thank you for watching and enjoy some pictures.